Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah, and today I'll be narrating an exciting and insightful story about unexpected delays, newfound friendships, and life's hidden lessons. Have you ever been stranded at an airport, feeling frustrated and helpless? This story will take you on a journey through one such experience, showing how a seemingly unfortunate event can turn into something truly meaningful. Let's begin. The airport was bustling with life, a vibrant tapestry of individuals from different cultures and backgrounds, each with their own unique stories and destinations. As I clutched my boarding pass for Flight 324 to New York, a surge of excitement mingled with anticipation ran through me. My suitcase, meticulously packed for the trip, sat securely at my side as I turned my gaze toward the departure screen. On time. A wave of relief washed over me. The day had unfolded seamlessly thus far, reinforcing my sense of control and preparedness. I took a moment to absorb my surroundings. The air was thick with the scent of coffee and distant perfume as travelers navigated their own routines. Some hurriedly finished last-minute phone calls, their voices tinged with urgency, while others sat quietly, immersed in books or scrolling through their devices with weary eyes. The rhythmic clatter of rolling suitcases on polished floors merged with the ever-present hum of announcements, creating a symphony of motion and anticipation. Over at a nearby coffee stand, a barista worked tirelessly, calling out orders as a long queue of customers waited for their turn to savor a warm cup tea. On my left, a family gathered around a table, speaking in hushed tones while a young boy doodled absent-mindedly on a napkin. Nearby, an elderly couple sat side by side, the woman resting her head on her husband's shoulder, their hands entwined, a quiet reminder of a love that had endured many journeys. Across from me, a businesswoman in a crisp navy suit furiously typed on her laptop, glancing at her watch every few minutes. A group of teenagers, dressed in matching jackets, laughed animatedly, their excitement palpable as they huddled over a phone, likely discussing their upcoming adventure. There was an unmistakable energy, a blend of excitement, anxiety, and longing that seemed to fill every corner of the terminal. Each person carried a story, a purpose, a destination, yet for now, we were all bound by this same space, waiting for time to carry us forward. The elderly couple in the corner, their hands entwined, whispered quietly, sharing memories of past adventures. A young student, hunched over his notebook, frantically jotted down last-minute notes, perhaps preparing for an important interview or a new academic journey. The barista at the nearby coffee stand worked tirelessly, greeting customers with a practiced smile, knowing that each cup of coffee might provide comfort to a weary traveler. Across the room, a mother attempted to soothe her restless toddler, gently bouncing him on her lap as he reached for the glowing departure board. A man in a sharp suit paced back and forth, his phone pressed firmly against his ear, negotiating a deal that couldn't afford delays. Despite our vastly different destinations, we all shared this singular moment of waiting, bound by circumstances beyond our control. I found myself momentarily lost in this mosaic of human experiences, marveling at the interconnectedness of our journeys, even in moments of stillness. It was a reminder that, despite the frustrations of travel, The airport was more than just a transit hub. It was a temporary crossroads where countless stories briefly intertwined before unraveling again. As I observed the ebb and flow of travelers around me, I began to imagine the narratives behind each person. The elderly couple might have been revisiting a place from their youth, reliving cherished memories. The young student, perhaps an aspiring writer, could be penning his next great novel, inspired by the characters around him. The mother soothing her restless child might be heading home after a long separation from family. These thoughts led me to reflect on my own journey. How often do we rush through life, focused on the destination, forgetting to appreciate the moments in between? Airports are strange places, where goodbyes and reunions coexist, where frustration and excitement share the same space. It's a reminder that life itself is a series of departures and arrivals, a series of connections both fleeting and profound. I closed my eyes briefly, allowing myself to absorb the hum of conversations, the distant sound of a child's laughter, and the steady announcements echoing overhead. Even in this state of limbo, there was something undeniably poetic about it. A sense of unity tied together this disparate group of travelers, each with their own purpose, their own struggles, and their own hopes. To my right, a weary traveler reclined against his backpack, his head tilted back in exhaustion. Across the way, a group of students animatedly discussed their travel plans, their energy a stark contrast to the subdued frustration surrounding them. An older gentleman quietly read a newspaper, his reading glasses slipping down his nose as he turned each page with careful precision. A flight attendant, still in uniform despite her obvious fatigue, sipped on a cup of coffee, watching the departure board with an expression of resigned patience. I allowed myself to let go of the urgency gnawing at my mind. Instead of seeing the delay as an inconvenience, I reframed it as an opportunity, a moment to pause, to reflect, to simply exist in this transient space. And so, instead of succumbing to impatience, I embraced the moment for what it was, a unique intersection of human lives, however brief it may be, and a chance to find connection in the most unexpected places. With my boarding pass in hand and confidence in my step, I proceeded toward security, unaware that the events of the next few hours would not only challenge my patience, but also introduce me to strangers who would become unexpected allies. What started as an ordinary journey would soon turn into an unforgettable experience, one that would test my resilience, shift my perspective, and redefine the way I viewed the unpredictability of travel. I was about to step into a storm of delays, frustrations, and uncertainty, but amidst it all, I would find moments of connection, lessons in gratitude, and stories worth telling. I navigated through security, where passengers hurriedly removed shoes, belts, and electronics, moving like a well-rehearsed symphony of seasoned travelers and first-timers alike. The usual chaos of travel was comforting, a reminder of the shared human experience of flying. The beeping of scanners, the hurried shuffling of feet, and the polite but firm voices of TSA agents formed the backdrop of this routine ordeal. Finally reaching my gate, I took a seat and watched the crowd, my mind drifting to the many narratives unfolding around me. Some travelers were deeply engrossed in books, their eyes scanning the pages intently, while others scrolled through their phones, their expressions flickering between boredom and urgency. A few engaged in hushed conversations, their voices blending into the ambient noise of announcements and rolling suitcases. A young woman adjusted her headphones and closed her eyes, seeking solace in music. A man near the window peered outside, lost in thought as he stared at the planes taxiing on the wet tarmac. A mother knelt to tie her child's shoelace while murmuring reassuring words to keep them calm. I took a deep breath, settling in for what I assumed would be a brief wait, completely unaware that this night would stretch into something far beyond a routine delay. The minutes would turn into hours, and as fatigue set in, so would the conversations with fellow travelers, the unexpected bonds forged in shared inconvenience, and the unpredictable twists of fate that would make this night one to remember. Little did I know, I was about to embark on an unforeseen journey within the airport itself, one filled with frustrations, discoveries, and a newfound appreciation for the unpredictability of life. Then, the calm shattered like fragile glass. A crackling announcement pierced through the hum of conversation and rolling suitcases, its metallic tone making everyone pause. Attention, passengers of Flight 324 to New York. Due to severe weather conditions, your flight has been delayed. Please remain in the lounge for further updates. The words hung in the air like an unwelcome cloud, sending ripples of disappointment through the waiting passengers. Some exchanged worried glances, others sighed audibly, and a few immediately reached for their phones, scrambling for alternatives. The illusion of a seamless journey had just been broken. A collective sigh rippled through the waiting area, a wave of exasperation spreading from one weary traveler to another. Some passengers groaned audibly, others muttered complaints under their breath, their frustration tangible in the charged atmosphere. A businessman beside me ran a hand through his hair, muttering, "Not again," his eyes scanning the departure board in disbelief. A woman nearby threw up her hands, exclaiming, "I can't believe this. Why does this always happen when I'm on a tight schedule?" Her frustration mirrored my own. I had an important meeting in New York the following morning, one I couldn't afford to miss. The realization that I might not make it on time settled in my stomach like a heavy stone. I clenched my jaw, staring at the screen displaying the dreaded word, delayed. Outside, the rain lashed against the windows, mirroring the storm of uncertainty brewing inside me. As I scanned the room, the reality of the situation set in. The waiting lounge was packed with restless travelers, their faces reflecting varying degrees of impatience and fatigue. Some paced back and forth, murmuring into their phones, attempting to rebook flights or inform loved ones of their delays. Others lined up for coffee, hoping that a warm drink would provide some comfort in the midst of the uncertainty. A few had settled into chairs, their eyes darting between the flight information screen and their watches, silently willing time to move faster. In one corner, a young couple sat huddled together, sharing a single set of earbuds, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of a tablet as they watched a movie to pass the time. Nearby, an elderly man with a travel pillow draped around his neck leaned back in his seat, his eyes fluttering closed in a futile attempt to nap amidst the chatter. Across the room, a mother struggled to calm her crying toddler, bouncing him gently on her knee while humming a soothing lullaby. Despite the air of frustration and anxiety, there was also a strange sense of unity, a silent understanding that we were all in this together. Strangers exchanged sympathetic glances, and occasional conversations sparked between people who otherwise would have never spoken. The storm outside might have disrupted our plans, but for the time being, we were bound together in this unexpected pocket of time. I found a seat by the window where rain splattered aggressively against the glass. Beyond the tarmac, the storm raged on, lightning crackling in the distance as sheets of water poured down in unrelenting torrents. The airport's floodlights illuminated the water streaks on the pavement, creating a shimmering effect that only added to the surreal atmosphere. I watched as a few maintenance workers in rain gear hurried across the runway, their figures stooped against the wind, their yellow vests glowing faintly under the airport lights. They moved with urgency, yet their gestures suggested familiarity. This was not their first encounter with a storm of this magnitude. The howling wind threatened to pull their ponchos free, but they pressed on, making adjustments to ground equipment and checking the idle plane on the tarmac. The aircraft, a large commercial jet, had likely landed moments before the storm reached its peak. Its engines were silent, its wingtips flickering under the intermittent glow of lightning. Rainwater streamed down its metallic body, pooling near the landing gear. The sight of it, motionless and waiting, mirrored our own predicament inside the terminal, stalled in an uncertain limbo, unsure of when the night would end. Inside, the terminal was filled with an unspoken tension. A few passengers fidgeted anxiously in their seats, repeatedly checking their phones for updates. Others leaned against their luggage, heads down, either in sleep or quiet resignation. Conversations had dulled into hushed murmurs, punctuated by the occasional sighs of frustration. The ominous weather mirrored the unease inside the terminal, an undeniable reminder that, for now, we were all at the mercy of forces far beyond our control. The thought unsettled me, but there was nothing to do but wait. I tried to focus on my breathing, forcing myself to remain calm. This was beyond my control, I reminded myself. In the grand scheme of things, a delay was nothing compared to what could go wrong. But still, the creeping anxiety of an uncertain night loomed over me like the storm itself, relentless and consuming. I clenched my fists, trying to will away the unease that gripped my chest. The terminal, though filled with people, felt eerily isolating. My thoughts raced. Would I make it in time for my meeting? Would I be stranded here indefinitely? Every second felt heavier, stretching the night into a seemingly endless wait. A woman sat near me, speaking into her phone. Yes, the flight is delayed. I have no idea how long we'll be stuck here. They haven't given us any updates yet, and it's getting frustrating. I'll call you once I know more, but for now, I'm just trying to stay patient. Her voice carried a mixture of exhaustion and exasperation, her fingers drumming anxiously on the handle of her carry-on bag. A man in a neatly pressed navy suit sat down beside me, his movements brisk and precise. He glanced at his watch repeatedly, tapping his foot in growing agitation. Bad weather, he muttered, shaking his head with a sigh. I should have taken an earlier flight. I knew this storm was coming, but I thought I'd beat it. His voice carried a mixture of regret and frustration, his gaze flicking toward the window where rain streaked the glass in relentless waves. "Hopefully, it won't take too long," I replied, attempting to inject a note of confidence into my voice. The man beside me sighed, rubbing his temples before forcing a small smile. "Let's hope for the best. But at this rate, I wouldn't be surprised if we're here all night. You know, I travel a lot for work, and delays like this always seem to happen at the worst times. Once, I was stuck in an airport for over 12 hours due to a mechanical issue. I barely made it to my meeting the next day." He shook his head with a chuckle, though his frustration was still evident. "At least this time, I have company." But deep down, I had my doubts. The weather showed no signs of clearing, and the uncertainty gnawed at me. The hours stretched ahead like an endless road, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this night was far from over. As minutes turned into hours, the atmosphere in the lounge grew heavier. The air was thick with unease, punctuated by deep sighs and the occasional frustrated groan. People whispered anxiously, eyes darting between their phones and the departure screen, which still read "delayed" in bold, unforgiving letters. Some passengers fidgeted restlessly in their seats, while others paced near the windows, watching the storm rage outside. A few had given up entirely, reclining in their chairs with arms crossed, resigned to the uncertainty of the night ahead. A woman joined our impromptu group, her eyes scanning the lounge with visible frustration. She sighed heavily before speaking. "Is there any news about the flight?" Her brow was furrowed, and her grip tightened around the handle of her carry-on bag, knuckles turning white. "I have an important conference in London, and now I don't know if I'll make it on time." The man beside me shook his head with a weary expression. "No updates. Just a delay. Looks like we're all stuck for a while," he said, rubbing his temples as if trying to will away the frustration. "At this rate, I might miss an entire day of business meetings in New York." She sighed, her shoulders slumping as she ran a hand through her hair. "I have a connecting flight to Europe. If I miss it, my entire trip is ruined." I spent months planning every detail, researching hotels, mapping out sightseeing spots, even booking reservations at renowned restaurants. I made sure everything was perfect, down to the last detail, and now it feels like it's all slipping away. Her frustration resonated with me. Traveling was always unpredictable, no matter how much planning went into it. Despite all the schedules, checklists, and carefully laid out itineraries, there were always variables beyond our control: weather, technical issues, last-minute changes. It reminded me of the times I had faced similar disruptions, where even the most detailed preparations couldn't prevent unexpected setbacks. The key, I had learned, was how one chose to react in those moments. Some let stress consume them, while others, like myself, tried to embrace the uncertainty and turn it into an adventure. Trying to lighten the mood, I shared a travel mishap of my own. Last year, I flew to Barcelona and my luggage was lost. I had nothing for 2 days except the clothes on my back and whatever essentials I could fit into my carry-on. At first, I panicked, imagining all the things I'd have to replace: my toiletries, extra outfits, even my favorite travel notebook. The first few hours were the hardest as I felt completely unprepared for the trip ahead. But then, I decided to make the best of it. I bought the cheapest clothes I could find, borrowed a few necessities from my hotel, and made a game out of living minimally. I wandered through the bustling markets, picked out souvenirs to replace my missing belongings, and fully embraced the spontaneity of my circumstances. I even befriended a local shop owner who helped me navigate the city like a true native. In the end, what had started as a frustrating inconvenience turned into one of my most memorable trips, a lesson in resilience and adaptability. She gasped. "What did you do?" I wandered through the vibrant streets, visiting local markets and discovering small cafes tucked away in quiet alleys. Though the uncertainty of being without my luggage was unsettling, I soon found a sense of freedom in embracing the unknown. It was stressful at first, but in the end, I had an amazing time meeting locals and experiencing the city in a way I never would have otherwise. She laughed, shaking her head. "That's hilarious. Something similar happened to me in Japan. I missed my train and ended up in the wrong city, completely lost. I wandered the streets, trying to make sense of the signs, but I didn't speak the language and no one understood me. Just when I was beginning to panic, I stumbled into a small cafe. The owner, an elderly woman with a warm smile, sensed my distress. Though we couldn't communicate through words, she sat me down, poured me a cup of tea, and made a few phone calls. Somehow, she managed to get me on the right train back. Looking back, it's one of my favorite memories, not just because of the mishap, but because of the kindness of a stranger who turned my panic into an adventure. We exchanged more stories, diving into the humorous, the disastrous, and the downright bizarre moments from our previous travels. The shared experiences bridged the gap between us, turning strangers into companions in misfortune. For a moment, the delay didn't feel so bad. Laughter replaced the earlier tension, echoing through the lounge like an antidote to frustration. It was a reminder that sometimes the worst travel experiences make for the best stories, ones we would laugh about later, long after the stress had faded into mere memory. Just as our spirits lifted, another announcement blared through the speakers, slicing through the murmur of the crowd like a cold wind. "Attention passengers of Flight 324. Due to worsening weather conditions, your flight is now delayed for an additional 2 hours. We apologize for the inconvenience and appreciate your patience during this time. Please remain in the lounge for further updates and assistance from our staff." The mood in the lounge shifted instantly. Murmurs of frustration escalated into outright complaints. A man stormed toward the airline desk, his face flushed with anger, his fists clenched at his sides. "This is unacceptable," he barked at the overwhelmed staff, his voice cutting through the restless crowd. Nearby, another passenger threw up his hands in exasperation, shaking his head as he paced back and forth. The tension in the air thickened, fueled by a shared sense of helplessness and irritation. The woman beside me rubbed her temples, exhaling a deep sigh. "This is ridiculous. Are we just supposed to sit here indefinitely? There has to be another option. Maybe they can reroute us through another city or offer accommodations. Surely they have a contingency plan for situations like this. We can't just be left in limbo like this with no clear answers." The tension was suffocating. People desperately called airlines, their voices rising in agitation as they tried to secure alternate travel plans. Others slumped in their seats, heads and hands, their expressions a mixture of exhaustion, disbelief, and resignation. A few paced back and forth, casting anxious glances at the departure screens as if willing them to change. The atmosphere buzzed with frustration, growing more chaotic with every passing minute until the final blow landed. Attention passengers of Flight 324. Due to continued severe weather conditions, your flight has been officially canceled. We regret the inconvenience and ask all passengers to proceed to the airline desk for rebooking and further assistance. Silence hung in the air for a fleeting moment before an eruption of complaints, groans, and even a few shouts broke out. The businessman beside me paled, his hands clenching into fists. "I can't miss my meeting. This deal has been months in the making." His voice was edged with desperation, his carefully composed demeanor beginning to unravel. The woman covered her face with her hands, her breath shaky. "I won't make my connecting flight now. Months of planning, reservations, everything, gone in an instant." She let out a heavy sigh, her shoulders trembling slightly. "I spent so much time making sure every detail was perfect. The hotels, the tours, even restaurant reservations. Now it's all falling apart. And there's nothing I can do." I swallowed hard. There was no escaping reality now. The line at the airline desk stretched across the lounge like a slow-moving river of frustration. Voices rose as tempers flared, and the tension in the air was almost palpable. Some passengers gestured wildly, demanding answers, while others slumped against their suitcases in exhaustion. After what felt like an eternity, inching forward step by step, we finally reached the counter, our patience worn thin, but our hopes still lingering. "The earliest available flight is tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., the airline employee informed us, her voice tinged with sympathy. "I understand this isn't ideal, but due to the weather, all other flights have been grounded for the night." "Tomorrow morning?" the businessman groaned, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "That's too late. I have back-to-back meetings lined up. This delay is going to throw everything off." The woman beside me shook her head, her eyes welling with frustration. "I'll miss my flight to Europe. I had everything planned perfectly, hotels, tours, even a dinner reservation at a restaurant I've been dreaming of for years. Now it's all falling apart." I asked, "Is there nothing else? Perhaps an earlier flight, even with a layover? Any alternative that could get us closer to our destination?" She sighed, her expression apologetic but firm. "All flights are grounded due to the weather. I truly wish I had better news, but safety comes first. We're working on alternative options, and we'll do everything we can to ensure your travel arrangements are sorted in the morning. If you need assistance with accommodations or meal vouchers, please let me know." Resigned, we accepted our fate. That night, we found ourselves in the airport hotel restaurant, the sterile lighting casting a warm glow over our unlikely gathering. Our frustration gradually melted away with each shared story and laughter-filled moment. The businessman finally smiled, setting down his drink. "You know, this delay was miserable, but in a strange way, I think it brought us together. I can't remember the last time I had such an engaging conversation with strangers." "Same here," I agreed. We raised our glasses. To unexpected friends. As we ate, the TV in the restaurant flickered with breaking news. Severe weather causes flight disruptions across the region. In a shocking turn of events, Flight 590 from Chicago to Boston encountered extreme turbulence, forcing an emergency landing. Reports indicate that several passengers sustained injuries, and emergency responders were dispatched immediately to assist. Our laughter died as a heavy silence settled over the table. The businessman slowly put down his fork, his expression shifting from amusement to solemn contemplation. "That could have been us," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman looked pale, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the edge of the table. "We were so upset about the delay, but maybe it saved our lives." It's unsettling to think that what seemed like an immense frustration might have been the very thing that protected us. Life has a strange way of working out, doesn't it? I exhaled slowly, letting the weight of the realization settle in. It's terrifying to think about, but you're right. Maybe being stuck here wasn't just an inconvenience. It was fate's way of shielding us from something worse, a reminder that sometimes delays and disruptions serve a purpose beyond our understanding. We sat in silence, the weight of realization sinking in. Sometimes, life's inconveniences serve as unseen safeguards, redirecting us away from potential danger. What had once felt like an infuriating setback now seemed insignificant in the grand scheme of things, a reminder that perspective can transform frustration into gratitude. That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on everything. The stress, the impatience, the anger, they had all felt so overwhelming in the moment, but now they seemed like distant echoes of misplaced frustration. Life has a strange way of unfolding in ways we least expect. What seemed like a disaster had turned into an experience rich with unexpected lessons. Sometimes, even the worst delays are not just inconveniences, but hidden opportunities, chances to slow down, to connect, and to appreciate the journey rather than just the destination. Delays, cancellations, and unexpected detours are inevitable in life. We can resist them, letting frustration consume us, or we can embrace the journey they lead us on, discovering lessons, connections, and moments of growth along the way. That night, 3 strangers, brought together by circumstance, bonded over frustration and found something far more valuable: perspective, gratitude, and a newfound appreciation for the unpredictability of life. They realized that sometimes the detours we resent the most lead us to the most unexpected and meaningful connections. Life is full of unpredictable moments, and how we respond to them defines our experiences. What may seem like an inconvenience today might turn into a lesson, an opportunity, or even a blessing in disguise. Embracing these moments with patience and an open mind can lead to growth and deeper connections with the people around us. If you enjoyed this story and found value in its message, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video. Expanding your vocabulary through storytelling is a fun and effective way to improve your English skills. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our latest content. Keep learning, keep growing, and stay motivated on your journey to mastering English.